Hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever the hell you are in the world, and welcome to SciTrek, your sci-fi TV and movie channel. I have literally just got off the phone with one of my sources at MGM, and I have some very interesting Stargate news to share with you. So far, it is the most up-to-date information we have about the state of Stargate and what Amazon are actually doing during the strikes. So, we'll get into it. We'll have a chat. We'll share some thoughts. I'm trying to find my intro bit. La la la. Let's get into it. Just ignore that it said Sunday because it's Tuesday. But right, this is a very last minute video. I literally got off the phone with the source about 10 minutes ago. So we'll try and get through this best we can. We'll have a chat with you guys while we're in it as well. Wild Waters, how are you doing, sir? Right, so please, guys, get into the comments as I'm going through all this. There's some good news and there's some bad news here, so be prepared for that. We've got some really interesting practical information about what's going on with Davey, with practical planning that Amazon have got, which is really interesting because, I mean, up until like 6 months ago, Amazon didn't have any sound stages of their own. Within the next 12 months, they're planning to have a lot. So we'll talk about that in a minute. They have a new partner, which is meaning they're going to be able to get lots and lots of sound stages very, very quickly. We have a few decisions been made. We have a few details, or at least working plans they've got. Andrew Chandler, how are you doing? We may have a budget for the movie, or at least an initial budget that they're working on for development purposes. We think we have news on a director. We have news on Mark Ferguson, Hawk Ostby, the guys that did the Expanse, that they may still be involved. We'll talk about that a little bit. And there is some news I'm not happy about, but it's unclear about exactly what that is at the moment. But okay, guys, so we'll go into that. Dave Stewart, just let us know, going to be a bloody SG musical. There is not going to be a Stargate musical that I'm aware of. We've had the 200th episode of Stargate, which had all, I think, to be honest, they crammed enough quirkiness in that one to, fill. We don't need to do it again. So, right, let's start off with this. We'll start off with the Hackman Capital Partners. Right, so the Hackman Capital Partners are a group of investment people, basically. They have, over the last 15 years, built up $4.3 billion worth of media real estate all over the world. They currently own 120 sound stages. They're currently developing another 90. They are right now have already got 6 sound stages for Amazon at Culver Studios. That's also where Amazon Studios is based. These buildings are actually built specially for Amazon. What's wrong with a musical? Let's have a musical. Why don't we have let's have a little bit of song. Stargate. No, let's not do that. Amazon are planning by mid-2024 to actually have something between 40 and 50 of their own sound stages. Now, that's going to come from a lot of development work. There's a little bit more development work going on at Culver Studios, where they may add studio space there. The Vancouver Film Studios is having a large expansion project being done at the moment. We're not having a musical. Calm down. Unless they put it on, somewhere. I don't know. Where do they have all the shows and things and musicals in Hollywood? What is it? It's the West End here in the UK, but I can't remember what it is in America. But anyway, so that basically means they are basically timesing by 10 the amount of studio space they have. So there's a big development going on at Culver. There's a big development going on at Vancouver Studios. In Ireland, there's the Greystone Media Campus, which is having a $300 million investment. And actually, Stargate's original home, Bridge Studios, is also having a massive, thank you, that would have done my head in, is also having a massive redevelopment project, which is something like $2 billion or something. $500 million. But they're building like 60 sound stages or something there. They're not going to be big, vast sound stages, though. Some of those are going to be quite small sound stages that they use for like voiceover work and stuff like that. But the main point there is the interesting bit is that currently Amazon have apparently earmarked at least 15 of these sound stages that they plan to take over between now and summer next year for MGM projects, specifically for MGM projects. Now, I told you a couple of months ago, I heard a rumor that, Andrew, that caused so much controversy. People either love or hate that idea. I tried to tell people that if they do an SGU movie, which I've got a video coming about in a couple of days because I know a bit more about that now, I might be psychic. If it's that or nothing, I take an animated movie all day. Please don't do what Strange New Worlds is doing and be more of a Metalis P3 style show. Yeah, I think like the nostalgia and stuff, Michael, is what people are going to be interested in, and that's really popular at the moment. I think Hollywood have actually finally got the hint that we don't particularly like remakes, even though I'm going to talk about remaking a bit. And we don't particularly like reboots, and we prefer continuations, and we prefer a bit of nostalgia. That seems to have got through to them. Saying that, Babylon 5 hard reboot is going to be on our screens next year, if it all goes to plan. So yeah, 15 sound stages for MGM projects. Now, we know there's RoboCop. That's one sound stage. We know there's Stargate. Now, I told you a couple of months ago that a different source had told me he genuinely believes Stargate is going to go home and it will be filmed in Canada. He thinks 2 of the sound stages, probably at Vancouver Film Studios, though, not the Bridge Studios, will be specifically put to one side for Stargate. It'll be 2 or 3 quite large studios that will be just for Stargate. The idea being that TV shows, movies, other things can be done together at the same time. They can share props. Actors can just go between the two. You know, you could have an actor in a movie and the series and they literally just got to cross the road, to do it. So it's efficient. It's more cost effective. And he genuinely believes that's the plan. Now, until now, we didn't know for certain whether Amazon were actually going to be renting, and they will be renting all of these studio spaces. Some of them have been built specifically for Amazon, but they're still being built by the Hackman Group. So they will be owned by the Hackman Group and rented to Amazon. The interesting thing there is, though, after a bit of digging around the Hackman Group, I have discovered that Amazon are an investor in that group. That Hackman is it's a capital investment company. So there's lots of investors. And obviously they've built up $4.5 billion worth of assets in 15 years. That requires significant income. Amazon are quite a large investor in that. So even though the Hackman Group own the studios, Amazon kind of own a bit of the Hackman Group. So we'll see that. Precisely and indeed. Well, any opportunity to say indeed, really. I rewatch Star Trek Next Generation era over and over again, but new Trek, I don't watch it. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why Metallis's Picard season 3 was so popular and I think it's actually why Lower Decks, even though not everyone loves animation, Lower Decks is massively popular because it is TNG and it reminds us of that. It's just better. And I think that's why the Strange New Worlds crossover with actually Lower Decks has been so perfectly done, and actually has seen a massive spike in Strange New Worlds numbers. They've gone way up the list for Paramount Plus's thing for this week. I think they're moving the episode and dropping it early as well. It was very much done on purpose. The numbers haven't been great for Strange New Worlds, so I think they very much decided, right, we're going to drop this episode early, straight after San Diego Comic-Con. People will talk about it. Boom, we get lots and lots of interest. Having sound stages puts Prime in a great position in the streaming wars. I think the streaming wars are over. but they are pushing now to really, they would like to overtake Netflix. I think that's true. The stream wars are pretty much over though, and they've got to rein in their spending. But actually, this investment, from the guy I've been talking to, he's saying that this investment is part of actually trying to spend a little less money. Amazon have been paying other people to produce a lot of the stuff they've been creating over the last 10 years, and they want to stop doing that. They want to start actually producing stuff themselves. That's the whole point about having 2 or 3 sound stages in Vancouver that will be the Stargate sound stages, that they can do the movie. We'll talk about that in a minute. Potentially then do the TV series straight away. And it's more efficient, and it'll actually cost. This guy reckons it can save them up to anything up to 30% of overall costs from what their current business model sort of thing. And that's a massive saving when you're talking about a project that's going to cost potentially. I mean, if you're looking at a budget of 100 million, by doing it this way, all of a sudden it only costs 70. That is a huge saving. The budgets they were looking at for the 10 episodes, even though there's been a couple of rumors knocking around that Amazon were talking about only $1 million an episode, that was nonsense. It's just not true. It does look like they were looking at around $5 or $6 million an episode. If they can get that budget, it is equivalent to what Star Trek spends of like $8 or $9 million an episode. So all of a sudden, it's all that money. It's saving money, and the more money they save, the more money they can put on the screen, and that's the important thing. Maybe just have a look quick. So we need SG-1, Stargate Infinity crossover. Oh my god, that would be so cool. Do you know what? I don't think I must have watched Stargate Infinity. I do remember it. I do remember the car going through the gate and stuff. So I must have watched it. But I think I've blocked it from my memory quite a lot. Most streaming services are decreasing. Amazon's actually, Netflix is doing okay. They've actually seen a bump, but that's because of their, they changed the password rules, didn't they? So you can't have the passwords. So they've actually seen a bump, but everyone else is struggling. If possible, the problem with Prodigy is I think they've just reverted back to their old business model with Prodigy. We might even get a 3rd season of Prodigy yet. The online petition just went back 30,000 names, which is more than the Strange New Worlds petition ever had. I just think they put it on Paramount Plus and Nickelodeon. It didn't work. They've decided to go back to the original business model of pouring it out basically to other subscriptions. So it's actually going to go on. I hear it's going to go on Prime. They are selling it now, but I've heard in a couple of ones it's just going to go on Prime, and the 2nd season will go on as well. And then if that does well, maybe Prime will order a 3rd season. I hope they do, because I think it's the most Star Trek thing on telly. I actually think if you're a Star Trek fan and you weren't watching Prodigy, you've missed out. Some stupid episode, but the finale was fantastic. B5 is a different reboot, I think, because JMS is doing it himself. It would be a 3rd party that did it. Ron Ma, you're dead on there, and it's true that JMS is doing the Babylon 5 reboot. This reboot is being done by a completely different team. We do have some updates on that as well. So it looks like, according to the source I'm speaking to, that the decision has been made. It is going to be a movie. At the moment, the working budget, the production budget for that movie will be something like $70 to $80 million. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that will be the budget for the movie. The way it's been explained to me is basically they come up with a figure that they kind of like to spend, and they tell the production, the people doing the development work. So this will be the director, that apparently there is one that's signed on, at least in principle. They won't release that name until it's signed on properly and they actually announce it, but it's signed on in principle. And the development team. They are given a rough estimate of what they think the budget for the movie would be. They then go away and they do the development work based on that rough estimate. I'm told that rough estimate always comes in low. So the end up budget always ends up being a little bit higher. So I'm not terrified about $70 to $80 million, even though that is a little bit low. That's like that Batgirl movie sort of budget. So it's not It's not terrible, but it's on the lower end, if you know what I mean. I think something more like $100 million for the movie would give me a little bit more confidence. But at the end of the day, we're going to go movies, don't really care. Also, this idea about the $70-80 million, but if they then do a TV series, they can spread some of those costs around. So, say they need a new Stargate set, they could build that on the TV series budget so that it doesn't go on the movie budget, or they build it on the movie budget and it goes off the TV series budget, if you make sense. So, they're very good at shifting money around. What a lot of studios actually like to do is they like to just break even on a lot of these projects and not actually make money on some of them, because then they don't pay tax and then make money on the back end. So they're very good at sort of like moving money around and moving the costs around so that it all makes sense. I hear this comment a lot. If they woke it up, they'll lose every single subscriber and the real fan of the franchise. Fact. If they push an agenda before everything else, then yes, they will. Stargate was never really like Star Trek is kind of woke. I prefer saying awake. We've had this debate a few times, but I prefer saying awake. It does talk about, gender and sex and sexism and racism and all these, and like the problems in society. Stargate never really did that so much. They touched on it in a few episodes. They did a few episodes that, had a moral, but generally speaking, it was more bad guy, shoot the bad guy. Next episode, it was more so. Yeah, if the development team that we think get this come in and they are loyal to the original series, then I don't think we're going to have a problem. Is the original Babylon 5 worth watching? I never saw it when it came out. Remembering Rich, 100%. Yeah, watch Babylon 5. The third and the start of the fourth seasons are the best. They when you have the Shadow Wars and everything, they're amazing. The first season isn't great. You got to plow through that. As soon as Sheridan comes into it, it's brilliant. And the Shadow War bits, some of the best sci-fi you'll see. It really inspired Deep Space Nine, and you've got to see past that. It's nearly 30 years old, and it didn't have the massive budget then. So yeah, you have to see through that. But it's classic sci-fi. Right, so where are we at? So yeah, we think we've got this $70-80 million working budget. I am being told that development work is still going on, that there are still conversations between Mark Ferguson and Hawk Ostby. They are still involved, and the rest, and there is a production team at Amazon that are at MGM that are still doing development work. Apparently, currently, there is no deal with a second studio. A second studio was involved at one point, and that was Warner Brothers, but they aren't now. Except they still are, but I'll leave that for another video. So that's a bit of a teaser for you. But it's streaming on Tubi now, is it? It's not streaming anywhere here. This is Babylon 5, I assume. It's not anywhere here, but I think you can get it through the Roku in the UK and Europe. So I think, but I've got it on DVD, so I don't really care. I think we're still at a transition where the studios are trying to balance sociological politics and good storytelling, but I'm confident they're going to figure it all out sooner rather than later. Skylar, I think you're right. I think I don't really want to go into a massive woke conversation. I want to get through this, but I think the studios had a massive overreaction to things like the Me Too movement. I think it became very clear that the studios have been massively sexist and racist for over a century, and there was a massive correction. They got so scared of being accused of being any ist that they just went the other way. I do think, though, that writers have always put their politics into TV shows and movies. I just think maybe the executives were pushing it, and I think we're now seeing a course correction back again, because the woke brigade and the people that shout this a lot have made themselves heard. Now, I don't think a lot of the stuff they shout is fair, but some of it is. Some of it is downright agenda over story. you know. And I'll always go back to the Ghostbusters with boobs example. They were basically, they started to do a film and they got a load of negative press saying about, you can't do this, it's a bunch of women, you can't do this. And they just went, can we? And they just, I think they got so obsessed with the negative press they were getting and the people shouting that you can't do this, they forgot to do a good film. And they just kept, the agenda just overtook it. There's lots of examples of that, unfortunately, where the studios seem to be having to put their hand up and go, we're not racist, we're not racist, we're not sexist, we're not sexist. We support you, the LGBTQ plus community, and they don't need to. They can do it through metaphor, they can do it through the story. They don't need to make it so bloody obvious. I do not want Aslan to occupy my Stargate. Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah. I'm a huge fan of the original Firefly show. I'd love to see them bring back the cast. Serenity, great addition. Well, if you know that, you'll see it in my video about a week ago. There are conversations at Universal about potentially doing a straight to, I think it'll be, is it Peacock? Anyway, straight to whatever network they own, streaming service they own, movie. Nathan Fillion and Alan Tudyk, however that's going to work, have had apparently very early initial conversations. Nathan Fillion is planning to step away from the Rookie. He'll still be in it, but he's going to step away a lot. He's going to do a lot of the DC stuff. And then he will potentially do a Universal Warner Brothers partnership, Firefly. Boom. Yeah, it just wasn't it? And Star Trek wasn't subtle about it. The black and white face thing, it wasn't subtle. There was, distinctly talking about racism. And I think Strange New Worlds is desperately just remaking Roddenberry Star Trek at the moment. They're just remaking it. So let's get through the rest of this stuff. Harris, if you're knocking around, mate, you're welcome to jump in. I'd love to talk to you about this in a minute. I wanted to get through it first, but if you want to. So apparently, again, according to the source, Mark Ferguson, Hawk Ostby are still involved. They have still been doing some development work. Apparently, they have created a Stargate Bible. Now, the Stargate Bible, no, that would actually, the conversation is that the original creator would return. And even though he's had some issues, he would be back. Also, the second guy, whose name has escaped me. There's the two, isn't there? But anyway, apparently they're both coming back. Joss Whedon and the other fella whose name's gone. So they've done the Bible. The Bible is a agreed history. Harris is eating, so he might be on with us in a minute. Yes, don't eat on a stream. Don't eat on a stream. It is a history plan. So it's basically an agreed story of Stargate, the past. It is not going to be 100% canon. Amazon have already made it clear to development team that they are allowed to change certain things. And the Bible is a document that basically agrees what is solid and what is canon and what can be changed. It may be sort of historical and certain events, maybe certain episodes that are going to say is still canon, and there are going to be certain things so that they will be allowed to alter if the storytellers want to, if they need to. Richard 14, Brad Wright is not involved in any way. He has had no contact with MGM. I don't know why they don't want to, but from what I've been told, they didn't want to from before the sale went through. They didn't like Brad's script from before they bought MGM. They were saying that they weren't happy with it. Apparently, a lot of the development work, when the script was going backwards and forwards with MGM, Brad Wright thought he was just working with MGM, but actually Amazon were secretly going to be the where the show went. So they actually approached MGM and said, we would love a Stargate show. MGM approached Brad, started doing a thing. But at that point, Amazon were looking to buy MGM, so they wanted to keep it very much secret. And because Apple were actually the front runners to buy MGM at that point, so there was some politics going on. But apparently, as the script was going backwards and forwards, Amazon kept batting it back and saying they didn't like it. Thank you, James Marshall, for the contribution. They really helped the channel, and they'll always get read out. Alan Tudyk could go back as the twin brother, not wash but dry. I should have read it before I started reading it. Yeah. Yeah, wash but dry. Perfect. Yeah, I do love a dad joke. I've got to that age now where it's all I do. I just try to make my children go, oh, Dad. Right, so they have the Bible, and they've also produced this is Mark Fergus is the primary lead on this. They have produced a history of Stargate. And again, this is then over the last 6 months or so has bounced backwards and forwards between MGM and Amazon executives. They have agreed a Stargate history, and that will be a Stargate history they can't mess about with. So I like this, though, because, again, they're sort of agreeing these things before they start. I don't think they did that so much with Star Trek. I think they let Alex Kurtzman just go nuts. And he brought in a lot from the J.J. Abrams Star Treks and sort of tried to make them canon when they're not. And that messed particularly the early Star Treks up. The first 2 seasons of Discovery were a complete mess. And I genuinely think this is why. They then brought in people like Mike McMahon, who does Lower Decks, who is very clearly a massive Star Trek nerd, and even Terry Matalas. And they started to fix it. They started to get it right, and they started to untangle the mess and put it back together again. There does seem to be a very conscious thinking from Amazon that they don't want to do that, that they want to have a very clear consensus of what is canon and what isn't, and how to make that work. How could you do a series without a Bible? They do it all the time, unfortunately. It's because these things take a long time to put together. Star Trek The Next Generation did this because there was such a big gap between the original series and TNG that they put this Bible together. Actually, Roddenberry was involved in it. It took a lot of work, and this is another reason why we haven't had an announcement already for Stargate, because this development work has took 8 or 9 months. It takes forever. SGW, yeah, man, I would love them to release that. Wouldn't that be a very cool thing to drop just before the announcement? I've got a video coming in a couple of days that I'm a little nervous about putting out because I'm not massively confident with the source and the information, but it all makes sense. I think it's logical, so I'm going to drop it, but it's very much a rumor. But I think there might be some quite big plans for when they drop this, that they're going to drop it and announce something almost immediately. But how cool would it be to drop it and then drop storyboarded stuff and like the Bible? I'm thinking like do you remember did Star Trek The Next Generation did a Enterprise manual and had all the detail about the Enterprise D? I love that. Geeked out on that. Yeah. I've been doing a video the last couple of days. We will come back to this in a second. I've been doing a video the last couple of days about the Ancients and trying to do a storyline. Figuring out when the Destiny was launched. It's a problem because it was either 50 million years ago or a couple of 100,000 years ago or a million years ago. Joseph Malozzi says that the city ships, Atlantis, etc., are about 30 million years old. And Destiny is older than it. So he reckons it's maybe about 50 million years, but somewhere in that 30 to 50 million years. Remembering 20 million years is a long damn time. So, yeah, it would be nice to get a little bit of clarity on that. Because there were a few. I say Brad Wright, Joseph Malozzi, Robert Cooper, etc. They didn't make many mistakes in Stargate, but they messed that one up quite badly. And it is confusing. There's a lot of things with the Ancients that's a little bit confusing, which is why I wouldn't mind seeing an Ancients prequel series, because it would allow us to maybe clear up some of these things. But I suppose, look, there's a massive gap between when the Ancients were knocking around and us. And, they also existed for like 50 million years in one form or another. Obviously, they still exist now just as energy. But so there's going to be some confusion there in timelines because it's just such vast information. We haven't got much archaeology on them. So it's going to be difficult. I'd love to see the story of the Altairans. How did they get to Earth and then create an alliance of the four races? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. In SGU, they kept saying it was less than 1 million years old. Yeah, and it was just thing. Secular Monk's got an interesting point there. How about if they did an a prequel movie? One of the big problems they've got with whatever they do first, and it looks like we're going to get a movie first. I did my video a couple of days ago where I was arguing we should get a series first, maybe just a mini series, just something. I said like an SGU animated movie because I think it's the only way we'd get it. Then a mini series that sort of like ties up a lot of the questions we've got from basically the last 15 years, builds a foundation that the movie can then jump off, because the movie's got an awful lot of stuff it's got to explain. It's got 15 years to explain. Now, it could either just not do it, just have an interesting story, something exciting, something that anybody could go and watch, not just us gators. Anybody could go and watch it. It's a 2-hour advert for then what will follow. And then they'll explain stuff later. They could do that. Or they could just give us a movie first. Give us a little mini series first. Because getting the tone right for the movie otherwise is quite difficult. And it's good. It's got to satisfy the gators. It's got to satisfy us. But it's got to be accessible to others. Do a mini series, let people watch that, let people catch up and what have you, and then do the movie. Seems to me the obvious way to do it. So you could spin off on that, because again, that only happened 100,000 years ago, according to the timeline, that the Wraith were woken up and the war started. 10,000 years ago. It was 10,000 years ago. So when you're talking about things like launching the Destiny, that's the nice thing I think with the Ancients prequel, is that there's enough gap as well, and we don't know enough about the Ancients that whatever they do, they can do pretty much whatever they want, and unless they're completely idiotic, they won't peel over canon. The problem with Star Trek is they put too much detail in a lot of these things, so then when they do prequels, it steps on canon, and then it annoys people like me that are a bit geeky. Stargate haven't really got that problem. They've been vague enough about the Ancients. They can do whatever they want. If anything, we want a prequel series, which I've never said before ever. I hate prequels. I freaking hate them. But in this case, I actually really, really want one, because I want to know more about it. I want to know more about what happened. I want to know more about how things like the Stargates. And as well, one of the nice things is the Ancients were technologically advanced. So we're not going to see one of these, the prequel series where the technology's got to be older because it's set 200 years before the show we love. They've got more technology than Stargate, universe even. So I think it'd be exciting in all of those respects. Let me just have a look. Whip through. James Marshall, Stargate 65, Altairans versus the dinosaurs. I haven't seen 65 yet. Is it as bad as I imagine? Let's have a vote in the thing. Just tell me, scale of 1 being bloody awful, 10 being amazing. How good is 65 if you've seen it? Because I think that looks terrible. I think that might actually have killed that guy's career. So, sorry. Please the thing. I think you need to define Amazon when referring to its wishes. Yeah, this is Amazon that at the end of the day, this is not MGM anymore. MGM don't exist, and this is what people do have to realize. Amazon have completely absorbed MGM. It's another reason why this is taking so long. Apparently, if we believe Amazon, the plan wasn't to just absorb them. The plan was to let MGM act as like as a satellite company. They would make stuff, produce stuff. Amazon would be the people. They would be the customer sort of thing. 4, 3, 3. I'll wait for it to go on streaming service. If it's that bad, it'll be on Netflix soon. Harris, you love everything. I'm not listening to you. You love everything. So they then argued that actually it was the pandemic that forced them to absorb it. But from what I was told, a lot of Amazon executives, they sort of went in and had a look at what MGM were doing. The company was just such a mess, creatively as well as anything else, and just inefficient, horribly inefficient, that they just went, nah, forget it. We'll just have the IP. And they just absorbed them. A lot of people did keep their jobs. A lot of people lost their jobs. But that never made the newspapers, though, because they never actually sacked anyone. As people have left, they've not rehired. Anybody that's left MGM in the last 12 months, they just don't replace them. But also anybody that was on short-term contracts, which in the entertainment industry is a lot, just had their contracts terminated. So they just ended. And that happened like instantly, straight away. Some of the sources I was talking to just lost their jobs. That's one of the reasons why I was able to get so many sources, was because people were so unhappy about what Amazon had done. They were willing to talk to somebody like me. And that has continued. Basically, the MGM is just, it doesn't exist anymore as a company. Everything has come now under the umbrella of Amazon. Amazon, the heads of all the departments are head of MGM and Amazon Film. So we're talking like Jennifer Salke is head of Prime and MGM Studios. Courtney Valentini is head of film and streaming for MGM and Amazon. The guy above all of them, Mike something, is head of so I think and MGM Plus and blah 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 blah. He's head of all of these things. So there's just no, there's just no thing. There's no MGM anymore. Name a good prequel. Anybody? There must be one. I liked Enterprise. I did like Enterprise. My frustration with Enterprise was they called it Enterprise. If they hadn't have called it Enterprise, if they'd have called that Endeavour, and it had been a different ship, because I just got irritated because the Enterprise, the original Enterprise, is the first Enterprise. They call it the first Enterprise repeatedly. So that just irritated me. So again, it was just irritating. And actually, other thing is Enterprise, if we'd actually seen the Federation get formed instead of that bloody thingy war, that would have been great. Michelle's got it there. Yeah, Rogue One. I didn't like Prometheus. Right, so why do they continue with the MGM name? This is a bit like when Disney bought over Fox. So there are tax reasons why it's a good idea to keep MGM. You can, when you put a project in, it's produced by MGM. But so there are financial reasons why having it in, and it's still technically, in some ways, it's a separate company to Amazon. It was a merger. Amazon didn't buy MGM; they merged. So that's a technical thing. But one of the main reasons, though, is Amazon Prime doesn't have a great reputation, and MGM is a century-old studio. The name carries weight. The lion roaring at the start carries weight. Also, technically, the IP is still owned by MGM, which is still technically a separate company. So anything that is produced that is an IP that's owned by MGM has to have the MGM logo on it. Even though it's only really like in principle, it's not in any sort of reality. In reality, it is 100% Amazon. Yeah. Cool. This was an amazing step on Cannon by Rick Berman, level similar to Kurtzman. Yeah, 100%. And all they had to do is not call it Enterprise. Why is Star Trek so obsessed with they must have the Enterprise? We must do something with Kirk. We're on our third Kirk. We must have. It's a big universe. Star Wars is the same. Let's have another show based on Tatooine. No, don't. It's a big universe. I really hope Stargate doesn't fall for this. Right, before we get anything, there is one piece of terrible news, apparently, according to my source. They have a director. They have all this development work that's been done. Apparently, there is no decision on cast yet. So a lot of the sorry, I just saw Stephen King. Did Stephen King get involved in what? Sorry, I missed that. Pet Sematary sequel will be good. I think he did, didn't he? I think he did. Prey was fantastic, Dave. I love that movie. I watched it again about a week ago. I love that film. I can't wait for Prey 2. It's going to be amazing. I can't wait. I would say it's a prequel, kind of. So yeah, some prequels work. Most don't. The main problem with a prequel, and I know I've said this before, but the main problem I have with a prequel is you know where they end up. Generally speaking, right? So we've got the Strange New Worlds prequel at the moment. We know where that's going because we've seen the original series. We know bits and bobs about the history because we've got the original series and things talked about in TNG and blah, blah, blah. So where is the threat? Where is the danger? We know what happens. So they've kind of insinuated that what happened to Pike, which we know what happened to Pike in Menagerie, might not happen. But it is going to happen, unless they're going to say this is another alternate timeline. Oh, surprise, Strange New Worlds is actually the Kelvin timeline. Well, I don't know because the events of it are later. But anyway, it's just, it's a nonsense. So, no, that's why prequels. But that's why the Ancients prequel could work, though, because it would be millions of years before. We don't know those stories. We don't know what happens. We actually know they die a lot. So there is lots of threat there that they can still do. That a lot of the prequels we see they can't do because they're too close and they're too intertwined with existing canon. So they can't do it. It's annoying. They didn't really do well, it was a prequel, but they tried to do Origins. But by that point, MGM had no money. They spent no money on it. Our close friend Jenny Stiven actually did a lot of work on this. And it had high ambitions, but it just didn't have the money. And it was a big idea that just didn't work. An Ancients prequel would be completely different, particularly if Amazon actually put some money in it. Welcome to our new member, Seppi120. Welcome aboard, sir. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Right, so one of the things I said, though, one of the things the source said, though, is that apparently the director that's come in has said, if he, or basically, can I explore the possibility of a hard reboot? Now, he hasn't apparently said he wants to do a hard reboot. He's basically asked Amazon if he wanted to, if after all the development work, he couldn't get a grasp of it and he couldn't figure out how to do it, or it didn't think it would work, could he explore the possibility of a hard reboot? And Amazon said yes. Now, I don't quite know how to take that, because for me, a hard reboot is literally the worst thing that could possibly happen. I don't think it will, because Hawk Osby and Mark Fergus have been working on this for a long time. They have an idea, and they've done a lot of work on it. Apparently there is, according to this source, again, this is one of my more regular sources, he says there is a working script for the movie. That is, and it's done. So that's really interesting. Apparently there is also an outline for a series that would follow. That's done. So they've got an idea how to do it. The director's obviously come into this, though, completely fresh. He's looking over everything, and I hope this is what it is anyway, and he's sort of gone, look, is there any possibility, is everything on the cards, or am I locked into this? And Amazon have basically said, work through this, and but nothing's off the table just yet. Now that may be just pandering to the director, sort of like, going, okay, they've got the man they want, or a woman, could be a woman. They've got the person they want as the director, and the director has asked this question, and they've sort of said, look, it's not impossible. We're not going to take it off the table. But I think that's a massive problem. Right. So it's just slightly off topic, but serious question. If you encounter a race of beings and they were peaceful but much more intelligent, advanced than us, and they offer to take you or bring them across the universe, would you go? Have you seen the movie Cocoon? Hell yeah, I'd go. Well, I wouldn't go because I've got a wife and kids, but if I could take them, I just think Andrew, I still think a hard reboot. They could build a better, well thought out universe, but a soft reboot will work just as well. Yeah, guys, come on, drop a like on the video. It really does help us out. Am I going to be on for a bit longer? If you're quick, because my throat's going. I'll probably push to an hour. But yeah, Dave, I think Andrew has a good point there that there are problems with just doing a continuation. The problems basically are that by the end of SG1, we were the dominant force in the universe. We had all the Asgard weapons, the Asgard core, the Asgard shields. We had the best fleet. The only other really threat to us at the time is the Lucian Alliance, but they were basically using Asgard gold technology, so we could take them out. I mean, our weapons were going to cut them bloody in half, sort of thing. So we are the dominant species. I've always argued this as I want Stargate, not Star Trek, when it comes back. So they have to figure out a way to equal the playing field, or we have to have a bad guy in there that's going to sort of knock us back. This is why I actually argued that the Furlings could be, or a section of the Furlings could be the villain, and they're basically ascended, and they are not really villains in case that they're evil, but they think we're too strong, and they think we're dominating, or that we're too powerful, or whatever, and they basically come in to put us straight, sort of thing. They think they're the good guys, but obviously we have to. They're fighting us. So that is a problem that the writers have to overcome. We have loads of starships. We have no real threat in the galaxy that we know of. We've taken care of all of it. This is one of the reasons why Brad Wright decided to do SGU. He needed to do something that had some genuine threat to it, because he basically got to the point of we were fighting gods. By the end of SG1, we've overtaken them. We've defeated them all. So how do you then make a story that's got a genuine threat? That's basically why in seasons 9 and 10 we had to actually have the Ori. We had to actually fight an ascended being, and because everything else was just done. So yeah, there are problems. So just for 10 minutes, hello Harris, sir. How are you doing?
Howdy.
How are you?
Doing pretty well. How about yourself?
Good. I'm very, very well, sir. So, obviously, you've been in the comments. You've listened to most of what we're talking about. Does anything jump out at you?
First off, no hard reboot, but
9 hard reboot. I did a video ages ago, and I did no hard reboot with loads of different languages. I might have to do that again.
That was great. But I guess what are you thinking about first? Like the budget wise, or what?
I think the budget, and this apparently, again, you might know a little bit more about this than me. I don't know if this seems to be how high up executive stuff works, is that they've got this working budget, but it's only an initial estimate that they then do the development work off, and then they sort of negotiate again. So apparently this $70 to $80 million is that working budget. That doesn't terrify me.
No.
It's still a decent budget. If you're not paying one of the actors $20 million, if you haven't got bloody Tom Cruise in it, it's not a terrible budget. It's doable.
No. For the filmmakers and the studio.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm thinking that might work. It does seem to be that this interesting that we're saying decision made on movie. Disappointed, but it looks like that's done. So
yeah,
that's nice to have a little bit of clarity on that, even though obviously we won't have real clarity until I always just wonder that the day before they could just go, the day before they announce it, just go, no, sorry, let's do a series.
No more.
Completely change their minds. But it looks like that's all the work is going towards that. So,
well, I like that you said that Mark Fergus. I always want to do it backwards. I always want to say that first name and back name like switcheroo, But Mark Fergus and Hawk Oxby, I love that they're still there. But yeah, they're economic filmmakers, and I think with the budget they had for The Expanse with sci-fi, think about what they could do for.
Yeah, I mean that
Stargate.
wasn't that long ago, and their budget was $3 to $5 million.
Yeah,
So,
and if they have a more focused team that's been kind of a well-oiled machine for a long time, not that they're going to be bringing back like Brad or everybody else, but like they still have that universe to kind of dig in and kick around in.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
happy.
Here's a good question for you then. Right, so Atlantis wormhole drive in the last episode was a big mistake. How can you explain the loss of this technology? I know the answer to this, but do you know the answer to this?
Oh, we tried to like push it off as something else for some live stream. I don't remember what you said, but you told us it. I just don't remember what it was.
Yeah, it was destroyed. They
That
destroyed
okay. They destroyed it while I was doing it.
Amanda Tappin's Sam Carter basically tells Shepard that it's burned out and they can't repair it because they can't even name half the technologies. So that's one way. They've already sorted it out. Jess Marshall has another contribution. Thank you very much, sir. Ancients could be upset that we are advancing too fast and take it all away just to get the gate and explore since they have no advanced civilizations. That was kind of my thinking. Maybe they're thinking we're growing too fast. And that's why the bad guys then come in and give us a smack. Another new member. Thank you, Richard Slack, for becoming a YouTube member. You supporting the channel. Thank you very, very much. Does that make sense to you, though?
What, the ancients kind of taking things away just as much? Yeah, that makes sense. They're
I've lost you a second, but I think there's either two possibilities. We've either got to get a villain that is just like super powerful, or they just do Monster of the Week stuff, and they just do problems. You know, a team goes through, gate has a problem, fixes the problem, comes back. You know, we just have. They don't necessarily need to have an uber evil villain immediately.
No, I'd honestly kind of like them to go the Mandalorian route, where it is kind of Monster of the Week, kind of like, oh, what adventure are we going to get ourselves going on for like the first season and a half? And then you kind of have those inklings of a larger story that are like kind of being teased for a little bit. And then we finally get that. Hopefully their season 3 is a little more well-fueled than Mando season 3 was, but I've got hope, you know, especially if they plan it out a little better from the get-go. It'd be nice.
This is just very quickly. Are you a local, Rich? Find me on Facebook and message and say hello if you are. I've told people I live in Telford, so I think that's in the West Midlands in England. I think I don't think I'm in any danger of anybody, like any fans stalking me or anything. But when I went to America, none of you turned up.
You were waiting for the party, but
51% of my audience is in America. Not one of you turned up. But anyway, my wife saw her cousin. Right, we knew she was in New York, and she said, "Oh, we'll try to get together." But then we never sort of arranged it. And then all of a sudden we heard Auntie K. She was just walking down the street. We just bumped into each other in New York.
So your wife had a better welcoming party than you did.
Exactly. My wife bumped into somebody she knew. Not one of you lot turned up. Anyway, please don't ever. If you do ever see me in public, please don't ever say that. I would die. I would just die.
Scare him. Give him a jump scare from the back.
Of course we have. Telford! Woo!
Commander.
It's a shithole, but it's our shithole, Rich. Yeah, so what else we got? I like that do you think it's a problem? Hard reboot, though. Do you think it's actually a problem that the director at least asked the question?
Who asked the question?
So apparently it was the director that asked the question about the hard reboot. So apparently there is a director they have a verbal agreement with. So no contract has been signed according to the source.
Okay.
But there's been a verbal agreement, and the director is having conversations about the development work. And apparently the conversation basically went, if we can't, I don't know if there must be some problems or something with certain aspects of the story. And if we can't figure it out, can we just do a hard reboot? Is that off the table? And Amazon's question was no, but we would rather you didn't. sort of thing.
I mean, I can see the appeal, but there's also 10 times the appeal to continue it, you know?
Yeah. That's what the fans want. We don't want a hard reboot.
Mm-mm.
When I've asked when I've asked you guys before, like 90-something% of you say no hard reboot. It's like there are still people that recognize, yeah, okay, it could be better in some ways, but generally speaking, yeah, well, there are Stargate novels they could look at. Yeah, 100%. We've got a lot of beta canon to look at. He's gone.
We need Stargate, Eris Bach. I'm prepared. Come on.
See, again, there are things like that we could do. They don't have to do a big sci-fi show. They could do something like that. They could do. I would love to see a Ronin movie, you know, like the Runners or something like that.
Just not even super expensive. Just give Momoa like 70. I mean, that's still pretty expensive, but give him like 50, 60, $70 million and just let him have like a small budget film. He loves indie films. It'd be perfect. It'd be perfect.
Give him a bit of get him producer credit and things like that sort of thing as well, and he might go for that. I would just adore that. But it's a big universe. There are ways around this problem with the hard reboot idea. And I would say the movie I'd actually argue the movie can't be a big sci-fi, that sort of thing. It can't be all the spaceships flying around and all that. They're going to have to be a specific problem because it's going to be a 2-hour movie. It can't be big, if you know what I mean. It's going to have to be focused in some way, and it's going to have to be, a team with a problem. Blah.
Yeah. For just the reference is just very fresh in the brain, but I feel like it doesn't need to be the Barbie movie at all. But the Barbie movie is very like large in scope and scale, while still very much following a smaller narrative. And I think it does that. It's not necessarily as good of a movie as I want it to be, but it is good as well. Yada yada. That's a whole different conversation. I do think it does very well with keeping a small narrative in a bigger, broader world, and that could be a good way of handling that, I guess.
As long as the replicators gone forever. Yeah, they did the replicators to death.
No more.
Particularly by the end of SGU, I was sick to death of the replicators. There's an Ancients replicators, is there as well? Oh, okay. So that whole thing about it being a toy that just got out of hand, are we forgetting that now? Anyway,
maybe the toy had some inspiration.
Andrew's asked a question. Do you think it would be dull for a broader audience? Dull it down. I don't think it'll be dull. I think it'll be an action-packed movie, but the question is, will us gators be satisfied? Because that's the difficulty. Are they going to give us enough that we feel like it's a Stargate movie still, but make a film that non-gators understand?
Which is difficult because I feel like Stargaters or gators in general are just, it's going to be hard to please us, but also super easy to please us at the same time. Like just some nostalgia would just be like, yes, thank you. Great. Make us feel good. But I think I don't know. I just think the type of people that like Stargate are not going to be the type of people who will like that in the long term. Kind of like we're in Star Wars stuff right now. Kind of like in Rise of Skywalker, where a lot of people came out of that movie like, that was not The Last Jedi. I had a great time. This is fun. And then 20 minutes later, that was me. I was like, oh, that was a really good time. And 20 minutes later, I was at a deer lease and my dad and I had to drive an hour back. And on that just ride back, we just started picking the movie apart. We were like, what the hell was that? It was brutally Frankenstein together. And you could kind of tell that. We don't want that to happen, I guess.
No. Well, it seems to me they're putting a lot of work in. And if anything, the strikes are not a good thing for anybody, but if you're going to look at for a slight silver lining, it is giving them longer to plan this. I should say, actually, by the way, that apparently the decision was made mid-June that they wouldn't be making an announcement at San Diego Comic-Con. They said by about the 10th or 12th of June, apparently, that was decided. They said they got to a point where it was very clear the actors were going to go on strike. So they made the decision then, and that's when they basically decided they weren't going to be really going to San Diego Comic-Con at all. So this decision made, and they just sort of slowed everything down a little bit, but it's also given them a chance to have another think. Second, an interesting question there: how important do we think Amazon. So the question
Oh.
is, how much does Amazon care about Gators?
Can I steal it from you real quick? Just because, like, the most blatant example of that, they have to care, and they know they have to care. If you would have said this 2 years ago, 3 years ago, even, it'd be a lot more iffy. It'd be a lot more open and in the air. But after Rings of Power, and after they saw what they did to Lord of the Rings and Tolkien fans, they know that they can't disappoint Stargate fans. Yeah. They know that for anybody. RoboCop people too, because that RoboCop's something that they could easily just kind of toss back out there. That's something that, hell yeah, we like some cool sci-fi, cool shoot 'em up stuff. Toss that back out there. But they know they can't screw it up, so they've taken their time. I'm assuming that's what they're doing with Legally Blonde 3 too, because that's another thing that they could have just tossed out there.
Let's not. We got to be careful with that because you don't want to jinx it, because that, that's the important project. That's the project with it. I'm thinking about changing the channel name to Legally Blonde 3 Trek.
Of course,
because that's the thing. For me, I know that there's quite a large marketing company that actually somebody that worked at MGM that got sacked and moved over there. And they do marketing work for Amazon and MGM. And apparently the term is, let's not Rings of Power this. And it is specifically known that was a thing, that everyone was so negative about it before it came out. And there was so much stuff. They are actively trying to avoid that in future. And if they do a hard reboot, the fans are going to go crazy.
I mean, when you alienate your cooked-in audience, like already baked into the DNA of what the show is, and just alienate them from the start, you're shooting yourself in the foot. The definition of it, making it a lot harder to walk, especially sprint.
And I would actually argue that Roland Emmerich told us this over a year ago. He told us, if you read between the lines now, exactly what was happening.
I didn't drop my microphone. I don't know what you're talking about.
Mike, big one. That he basically said, one, that the Amazon only care about the TV audience. He basically said, if there's a movie, they've got to involve me because I'm contracted. Which again, now we realize it's because they must have gone to him and said, we're thinking about doing a movie. And that's the only reason he was even bringing it up. So I think they approached Roland Emmerich and said, we're doing a movie, and he's going to be an executive producer and a producer on this, whatever they end up doing. But he's already said, but I don't want to take the reins. I don't want to lead because it's going to be an SG1 movie. It's going to be an SGA movie. It's the TV audience that matters to Amazon. I think that tells us, if you read between the lines, that tells us everything we need to know. And from what we know since, sort of thing, that tells us everything for me. TV audience, all that matters. And they were thinking about a movie even then, which is a few months before I started hearing the rumor that they were seriously thinking movie.
Well, like you said, I am easy to please, especially in the sci-fi category. So I do love me some B. Roland Emmerich. I saw Moonfall in IMAX and had him. I was at the interview, so like the premiere-ish, I guess.
Did you put your hand up and go, "What the fuck was that?" And then he sort of talks and no, seriously, what the fuck was that?
The only good thing I got out of that was wanting to watch Stargate. So. Woo!
Yeah, I just don't think we need to.
I don't think him as a producer, I think, would be fine. I don't mind him being a producer at all. And I guess you made me think of a question. Just because you've had some fun talks about it. If a Stargate universe animated movie does happen or anything of the sort, would he be, even if it's animation, would he be an executive producer in that field as well, or is it strictly live action?
No, it's only if it's a movie, a cinematic movie is my understanding, that he has to be involved. Which is another hint that they're looking at a cinematic movie. Yeah.
Well, if they put the animated film,
they could do TV movies. They did it, didn't they? And he doesn't have to be involved.
But they could put the animated film in theaters as well, huh?
I don't think that's the plan. I don't want to say too much. I've got a video coming. But I don't think there'll be an SGU cinematic movie now.
All right. Okay.
Like I say, I don't want to say too much about that. So I don't want to ruin the surprise, and I still want to work on the video a little bit because I'm still not 100% certain about a few points. But again, teasing you guys, I know, but yeah. Andrew, yeah, I'm expecting my DVD to come anytime. I think it's the end of this week. I think, or this or next week. So yeah, the B5 release date is done. I ordered mine a couple of weeks ago. My thinking is I will watch it and then I will give it away to one of you guys. So you don't have to buy it just yet.
Can I throw a wrench at you real quick?
Go on then.
Just because you brought this up earlier, how Babylon 5, just because it is a hard reboot, but it is JMS doing it, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would you think if Brad Wright wanted to hard reboot Stargate? Would it be okay then?
It would get more credibility, wouldn't it?
A little bit.
It would be a lot harder to argue with it, and to be honest, it would take the wind out of all the sails. Say this director got his own way. Say he decided I want to do a hard reboot, and Amazon going, oh, okay then. Even though all the evidence up till now is just that's not going to happen. So please don't panic.
People already
the easiest
know.
way to take the wind out of all of the negative people's sails is by getting Brad Wright involved.
That's true. Even if it were to do something like that drastic, I guess, for lack of a better term. Yeah, I don't know. There's just a thought that came to mind. I don't even know what I'd think about that.
It would look, to be honest, if they did a hard reboot, I'll be disappointed. I'll be annoyed. But I'll still be thinking, well, at least we're getting Stargate back. And this could be a new birth. So we might look back on it in a couple of years and go, what were we worried about? That's amazing. We've still got SG1, SGU, SGA. It's still there. We can watch it whenever we like. But now we've got this new Stargate as well, which is even better. That could happen. It's very unlikely. but it could happen.
Yeah.
So I would try not to panic, but it's not what we want. It's definitely not what we want. They could do something amazing, but it's not what we want. So we'll see.
Fun little exercise of thought, but
yeah. But yeah, if they brought Brad Wright back, it would be hard to argue with it, wouldn't it? I mean, that's the thing for anyone that goes on about how they don't want a hard reboot of Babylon 5 is you just go, it's JMS's show. He wants to do it. Shut up, basically. It's not up to you. Just shut up.
So just another dumb, bad thought, just to top that one real quick. Brad Wright writes it, and Roland Emmerich directs it. What do you think?
Exactly. Yeah, well, no. Roland Emmerich's time was 10 years ago. Yeah. But mate, I'm sorry. I do have to call it an evening, guys. We went through everything we wanted to go through. I didn't want to keep you too long, Harris, and my throat is killing me. And so that's basically it. Movie, $70-80 million. Hard reboot is possibly on the table, or at very least, Amazon won't say no yet. And Amazon are making real strides towards getting anything up to 40 to 50 sound stages by next summer, which is astonishing if that happens, because I mean that is. But this deal with the Hackman Group looks like it's a very easy way of getting a lot of sound stages very, very quickly. It's the main reason why the Hackman Group are building 90 new sound stages, and they're still going ahead with that, even though everything's happened in the last 12 months. And they're still going ahead with all this development money and it's mainly because of giving this many sound stages to Amazon. So on all over the world as well, Ireland, Canada, and America, they're looking at more sound stages.
Good.
Fantastic.
Well, I mean, as worried as we have been, and rightfully so for many, many, many reasons, we did just have the 4th largest box office opening weekend of all time.
Yeah.
So things are still kicking.
Yeah, I think that's astonishing. I think that's absolutely astonishing.
I think it just shows that we have to readjust a lot, and 2 movies bouncing off of one another like that helps a lot. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. It's really interesting to think about. Talk about a good thought experiment.
Yeah, 100%. Right. Guys, thank you so much. We've had over 100 people watching at times tonight, which is brilliant, particularly for a video that I decided to do 5 minutes before we started. And I'm sure we're going to come back to this and discuss it again. I'm sure I'll try to get a few more details over the next couple of weeks, but really, we're in a holding pattern right now anyway. No new decisions going to be made. There might be some development work over the next couple of months, but there's going to be nothing now until the strikes are ended. We're not expecting any official announcement until the strikes are done. Then hopefully something will happen very, very quickly. So, guys, thank you so much. Everybody in the comments, you've been amazing today. Thank you. You've really thrown out some amazingly, very interesting ideas as well, as you always do. And Harris, thank you very much for helping me just come and sort of recapping it all.
Oh, of course. You know,
yeah, we should be seeing you tomorrow on Cubed. We might actually stream it on both channels again because that was quite good. We need to get you some fucking subscribers, so please go over and subscribe to MQ. There is a link in the description, and I think it's on my the YouTube channel as well. I think if you scroll down, there's like connected channels. I think
yeah,
you're there.
I think so.
I think Matt did it. So again, that'll take you straight there. Thank you, everybody. We will see you Sunday. Well, we'll see you tomorrow, and we'll see you Sunday for the usual live.
Of course.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Adios, y'all.